Like, hey, oh, there you are. We'll discuss that in Mark's annual review. Excited that you're here, and that's kind of a fun way to launch into this conversation that we're having over the next several weeks, and it's all about disagreeing, or agree to disagree is the name of the series, and if there was a tagline, it would be rediscovering the lost art of disagreement and why in the world it's so important. Rediscovering the lost art of disagreement and why in the world it's so important. Because, and I don't have to tell you this, you know this, we live in a world and in a culture, specifically in this day and age, where there is extraordinary disagreement. There is extraordinary polarization between groups and peoples that disagree. And in fact, one of the things that I think is interesting is we now, more than ever, think about someone positively or negatively, not because of what they do, not because of what they make, and in fact, oftentimes not because of what they look like. It's because of, do they agree with me ideologically, politically, religiously? And I think that that is nothing new. In fact, I kind of think the opposite. The reason I think that we disagree so much, or that we are aware of our disagreement so much, is because now more than ever, we have the ability to know so much information. In other words, there is so much to disagree on. We have more information about things that are going on in our world than we ever have before. Whether it's a big thing, it's a macro thing, or it's a micro thing, we all have stuff, we all have information and thoughts. In fact, for those of you who haven't been living under a rock, you know that last Sunday news hit. It was after our last service, and I was on my couch, and we just put our kids down, and they were kind of taking a nap. One of them was taking a nap. One of them we were praying would take a nap, and they didn't. But I was sitting on my couch and kind of unwinding and decompressing, and also my phone started just vibrating and vibrating and vibrating. I looked down, and I had this group message that also everybody's texting that Kobe Bryant was in a helicopter crash. And I thought, what? You kind of have that initial, that news hit, and you're like, oh my gosh, Mamba mentality can't be true. And so I do what everyone probably over the age of 30 would do, which is to go to my news app, right? And I'm looking at my news app, and I'm hitting refresh, and nothing's coming up. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? I need to go to where news comes from. Let me go to Twitter, right? And so I scroll and I see it, and TMZ comes up, and I'm like, okay, that's TMZ. They're weirdos. They don't really, kind of slime balls, So maybe hopefully it's not true. If it's not true, and it comes out that it is true. And then the unfortunate tragedy, not only, did he pass away, but and his daughter passed away, but another, father and daughter, and it's kind of this, some hopefully interesting and neat redemptive stuff that's come out of it, right? But within seconds, we knew that tragedy had hit. And then this week, if you follow anywhere in the sports world, you know that every single basketball game, there have been people who have ran out the 24-second clock on both teams. You know that LeBron gave an incredible speech at the first Lakers home game. I mean, the amount of information that normally would take so long to trickle in is incredible. We have so much information all at the same time because everybody has a microphone. And here's the other side of that. We have information, and we also have the ability to tell people what we think about the information that we've received. It is called social media. And this is going to be crazy for anybody who's under 25. But when we used to disagree, one, there wasn't a ton to disagree on. It's like, what, you like the Gators? Are you kidding me? How is Satan, by the way? That's ridiculous, right? But if you're a Gator fan here, man, okay, go to a different church, okay? Just kidding. But if we disagree, this is crazy. You had to disagree in person, right? You actually had to tell the person, I disagree with you. Here's why you're wrong. They say, here's why you're wrong. And you'd have a debate or a conversation about it. Or from time to time, you'd throw punches over it, right? But there would be a disagreement that would happen in person. And now we can say what we think, whether we agree, whether we disagree about any subject that we want to, whether we're informed or whether we're not informed. And because of the amount of information that we take in, oftentimes we feel like we're over-informed. And so we'll take somebody who has a PhD in the subject. We're like, I know you spent years of your life and you added new information in this field. But have you seen this Netflix special? They disagree, and so here's what I think about this. Now, isn't this true? It's not that any of that has made us disagree more. We're just aware of more and able to put what we think about what we're aware of out more easily. And we are all a part of this. And here's what's underlying behind that. Is that what we think is based off of what we believe. And what we don't realize is how our beliefs come intact. And here's what I'm spending a few minutes talking about. How we come to our beliefs, because how we come to our beliefs help to inform us of why we agree and why we disagree and why it's just so evident and apparent for us. Now, you may never have thought about this, but if you have ever spent a lot of time thinking and understanding how we come to our beliefs, it's pretty simple. Belief is created through our experience and information and filtered through the lens of our personality. So belief, what I believe, is the culmination of my experiences and my information. My experiences, my information, often those things are synonymous. They kind of happen concurrently. But the experiences and the information I received, and then that experience and that information is filtered through the lens of personality. This is why, or the lens of personality is why two people who grew up in the same household can believe different things. Maybe one person's a pessimist. Maybe one person's an optimist. Maybe one person had a different group of friends or that group of friends. But we all have experiences, we all have information, and we all filter our experiences and our information through the lens of personality. For example, this is why most people who are of a political party oftentimes are of the same political party as their parents. That's not a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's a thing. This is why most people who have a religious affiliation have a similar religious affiliation of their parents. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It just means that we all have our beliefs, and many of our beliefs, and this is not every single person for every belief, but many of our beliefs are filtered through our personality based on our experience and our information. Now, here's the problem with that. As interesting as that is that diversity of thought creates differences. And here's the deal. We all as people have had different experiences and different information. The idea that Jesus gave, Jesus said, all right, early church, here's your goal. I want you to go and make disciples of all nations. He said, all power, all authority has been given to me, so go therefore and make disciples of all nations. I want you to baptize them in the name of the Father and the Holy Son and the Holy Spirit. I want you to teach them everything that I have taught you. In other words, I want you to go to every person, every group, every genre, every continent, every walk of life, every people group, and I want you to tell them the good news. And here's what the good news is. The good news is that we in and of ourselves are sinful, alienated from God, that God saw that didn't condemn us, didn't send us away, didn't cast us away. He did the opposite. He sent his son to the world to die, that if our bank account said this and his bank account said this and we couldn't reconcile the difference, he reconciled that for us, making us fundamentally compatible for the first time with God. He said, so everybody needs to hear this. But if the gospel is for the nations have different experiences and information, which is the central problem of church, is that when we come together, we are a people of different experiences and different information. That's why for some of us, right, you like Pepsi over Coke, and the reason is because you're a weirdo, right? Like nobody in their right mind would think that. You think Bradley's better than Register's? Like, what, are you kidding me? It was funny because Christian was running through all these questions for me, and I just was giving my thoughts, and I was laughing at a bunch of them because they were kind of silly. But it became really apparent that we are a people, a diverse group of people who believe different things. And some of it's kind of silly and light, right? But some of it's more has more gravity to it, more weight to it. For some of us, we believe in a conservative political agenda. For some of us, we agree with a liberal political agenda. For some of us, we agree that Black lives matter. For some of us, we agree that blue lives matter. For some of us, we believe that all lives matter. For some of us, we believe that all lives matter, but whose life doesn't feel like they matter. For some of us, we believe this about refugees. We believe those about refugees. In fact, this year specifically, not this whole thing is by any means political, but this year specifically, we're going into an election year. And are you kidding me? The level of polarization, even within one political party, is crazy. And it exists within the church because when the gospel goes to the nations, the truth is, we all have different experiences. We all have different information. And we all have different personalities. And in that, we have different beliefs. And here's the real underlying issue behind all that. Is in diversity of people, places, spaces, races, generations, ethnicity, socioeconomic, education, political, ideological, theological, doctrinal. Diversity implies differences, and differences create tension. Simple as that. When we differ, there is tension. If I got up here and I said, church, this morning I want you to know I'm going to give the entire sermon on why Jesus most well and most perfectly aligns with the Democratic agenda. Just me saying that, like my Republican friends in here, you're like, bro, I'm going to go to City Church next week. This is ridiculous, right? Or if I said, hey, everybody, I want to give a talk, and this entire thing is why Jesus more specifically aligns with the Republican agenda. Everybody in the Democratic Party would be like, whoa, what are you saying here, right? Because, and here's why. When we have differences, our differences create relational tension. And we don't like tension. So if the gospel is for the nations, if our church is a church of people of diversity from different generations, ethnicities, education, socioeconomic, political, ideological, and religious, then as we coexist with one another, there is inevitable tension that our differences create. And again, we hate tension. This is why some of you have joined this brand new cult, and it's called The Bachelor, right? And let me tell you how this whole thing, this is how every season goes, is, there's I don't know who anybody is. So I'm just going to say it's the Bachelorette, right? And let's say Karen, and Karen is looking for somebody, and Karen is like, and then there's this guy who, like, everybody else is pretty, like, kosher in the group, but then there's this dude, his name's probably Chad, right? It's Chad or Brad, and Chad's like this, like, monstrous, he's like, and like, he's like disagreeing with everybody, and he's causing all this kind of, this disagreement, this friction in the house, right? And that is tension. Everybody's like, just freaking vote Chad off, and she's like, but I like him because he's the bad guy, and everybody's like, yeah, and you're going to have a bad life if you end up with them, break up with them, relationship advice, right? But then it comes to the ceremony. If you don't know how this show goes, then at the end of the show, they have this thing, and whoever gets to stay gets a rose, and whoever doesn't, they basically gets voted off the island, and they go home in this limo, and they're crying like, I loved, it's like, you've known them for 3 days, good grief. But what happens every time, and you'll see this, is there's like one rose left, and it's between these two people. And it's Chad, and it's usually like a good person named, let's say it's Ben, okay, right? So like, let's say Bill, okay? So let's like it's between Chad and Bill, and the music starts to build, and it's like, whoa, and they take the weirdest pause in the history of pauses, and it's like, with this last rose, I choose commercial. And it's like, what? Are you kidding me? And you've seen this, right? Now, let me tell you. Now, a lot of times we feel like, oh man, they want us to wait. Here's why they do that. Let me tell you the thought and the economics behind that. What they know is this. At the height of the tension, we are leaning in most closely because we want tension to be resolved. It is natural and innate inside of us. We want tension to be resolved. And so what they do is right at the height of tension, they pause and say, here's some Frosted Flakes, here's some whatever this thing that we're going to try to sell is, because we're zoning in and we're laser focused into what's going on. And that is the greatest opportunity for them to monetize the show that they have now created based on the storyline, which all storylines are based on tension and the resolution of tension. Here's all I'm saying. We love to resolve tension. But if we are going to be a church that decides that we are going to be a church that has the gospel to the nations, that we want to engage all kinds of different people, and if we just took the state of Florida, by the way, like if you grew up in Tallahassee, like you grew up wearing a Browning jacket. If you grew up in South Florida, I don't know what you wore, right? But you drove a white, Lexus, and we're glad that you're here, right? Like you like pickup truck, and like there are just incredible differences just in the geographical state of Florida of how we were raised. And so if we are going to be a church with diverse experiences and information and diverse personalities, tension will exist. Everything inside of us wants to resolve that tension. And so what the church normally does is they do resolve the tension. We stick to people who are like us, who think what we think, and who believe what we believe, who look like what we look like, and who, generally speaking, make what we make. Because it's uncomfortable to live in tension. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking, how then do we live in this tension? And here's all I want to do today. If we don't like tension, and tension is worth fighting for, here's what I want you to ask today. Tension's easy to resolve, but what is lost when it's resolved? Tension's easy to resolve, but if we are going to fight to live in this tension, if we ever resolve the tension, if we ever settle the tension, if we ever let go and just kind of, go with the flow and silo ourselves, what is lost? What happens? What is at stake for us to stay one? Now, here's what's interesting. When you read the New Testament, in fact, for many of us, we've been reading through the book of John. The book of John travels along the life of Jesus. If you're not familiar with the Bible, the New Testament starts off with 4 different accounts of Jesus' life: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. John, in his basic account of Jesus' life, spends about half of his book talking about the last 24 hours of Jesus' life. Extraordinary documentation. In John 17, John records a prayer that Jesus prayed. And Jesus prays not just for his disciples, he prays for everyone who will eventually believe through his disciples' message of God's love for the world. You want to know the one thing that Jesus prays for his church? The one thing that Jesus prays for everyone who will believe in his message. It's for oneness. It's for oneness. And I want to discover today why it's worth fighting for. If you got your Bible again, John chapter 17, verse 20, we're going to start. So Jesus is praying. This is Jesus, the Son of God, praying to God the Father with his disciples, in front of his disciples. And he says this, verse 20, I do not ask for these only. The reason he says that is he just got done praying for his disciples specifically. So he's about to broaden the horizon of who he's praying for. He says, I don't ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. In other words, there's going to come a people, there's going to come a church that they're going to spread this message. And people are going to believe because of their eyewitness testimony. He's, in a few days going to, or in a few hours going to die. He's going to come back to life. He's going to resurrect from the dead. Everybody's going to, start to say, holy cow, if you can rise from the dead, we're going to believe in you. He's going to call people to go tell the world that he is in fact the Son of God, that God has in fact loved the world, has given his Son for the world. And he says, okay, and there's going to be a message. And so I want to pray one thing over everybody who will believe, that they may all be one. This is the only thing he prays for. He repeats it. He said, God, I got one thing that I want to think about. And I think it's almost as if Jesus peered into the future of humanity, because just after his death and his resurrection, the mission and the story of Jesus would start to take this turn that all of a sudden, for the longest time, the gospel, the people of God were just the nation of Israel. But all of a sudden now these Gentiles, these people with no religious background, this people from almost a totally different ethnicity. I mean, talk about a totally different experience, ideology, theology, generational, pull it up. I mean, there was just worlds apart would all of a sudden come under one roof under the banner of Jesus. And I think Jesus seeing that and knowing that and know how we like to silo ourselves and kind of stay in our own individual lane says, okay, this gospel is going to be for the nations. And so, God, I am just praying that you would make them one. Not just for these that are here, but for everyone who believes, which is us. He says, in case you're wondering what this oneness looks like, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us. So that, or here's why this is important, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. God, I pray that they would be one. And not just for the sake of unity. Because a lot of times we sit there and say, oh, let's be unified, and so here's what we're going to do. We're all going to hold hands, and we're going to sing, we're going to be at a camp thing, and there's going to be a bonfire. And, if we were old school, we would sing, so light the fire, and we're just going to tell our stories and share our emotions, and this is how you feel, that's how I feel. Oh my gosh, let's take our sin, let's take a stick and put it in the fire, and then we, 2020, there was another one in the fire, or if you don't lace for grace, you kind of block it off, or if you don't block it off, you at least hold pinkies because, come on, we're friends here, right? So let's just get together, sing Kumbaya, and have unity for the sake of unity. He says, no. It's way, way, way bigger than that. I pray that in a polarized, fractioned, disenfranchised world, there will be this diversity of people who all have this inexplicable love and oneness for another. And I pray that when people of no belief see that, see how people of one similar belief that can transcend every other belief would be one, I pray that the world would see that and they would believe. Here's the simplest way I can say this, and I can't emphasize it more. Our oneness is our witness. Our oneness is our witness. He said, I pray and I hope that everybody who sees this and experiences their oneness, they will see their oneness and this will be their witness. He goes on to elaborate. He says, verse 22, the glory that you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one. And if you're wondering, by the way, how far this goes, he says, even as we are one. That is wild. He's talking about the Trinity here. He's saying, okay, in the same way that God the Father is one with God the Son, that they are different in personhood, but they are the same, they are one in essence. By the way, the theology of the Trinity is just a wild exploration in and of itself. He's saying, man, the same way that God the Father is one with God the Son. I pray that that would be the best description of my church. Can you imagine? Let me just ask this question. If you're in here and you do not know if you believe in Jesus or not, you're wrestling with faith as an adult, you're not trying to wrestle with this Christianity, this religion thing, wouldn't this be wild to you? In fact, isn't this part of what's kind of difficult for you to wrap your mind around? Is there are so many different versions and variations of church. Right? Church, man, we disagree about everything. You name it. Should we use instruments? Should we not use instruments? Should we stop with music progressing in about the 1800s or so? Should we do contemporary songs? Should we do old songs? Should we have bagpipes? Should we have, I don't know if bagpipes, that'd be pretty dope actually. Should we have organs? Should we have guitars? Should we have electric guitars? Are electric guitars Satan's music? Let me tell you, here's what's interesting. I heard this in the religious department. I've never fact-checked this to figure it out. But in the religious department, they said, at one point the church actually got fractioned over the ideas of forks, because when forks first hit the market, there was a group of the church that basically said, look, we don't need forks. God gave us hands, and for us to use some other utensil besides our hands that God gave us to eat, let me tell you, that is a deviation from God's plan. And it's bro, just use a fork, okay? It's not that big of a deal, right? But we split over everything from baptism to carpet colors. And it is everywhere. And I feel like Jesus in this thing, and we're going to, by the way, discuss what that means and how that looks and all kinds of stuff in the future. But he's just, man, I just pray that they would be one. That the same way that I would describe the Trinity is how I would describe the church in their oneness. I and them, verse 23, and you and me, that they may become perfectly one, so that, let me reiterate, the world may know that you sent me and love them even as you loved me. Said, I'm praying that the world would see the love that they have for one another. And it wouldn't be this fraction, disenfranchised. They would have this love for one another. And the world would see that, and they would say, man, we just can't even explain it. Now, I think the key starting point for this happened in verse 21. Because he says, I pray that he says, Father, as I'm in you and you're in me, I pray that they will be one in us, talking about God the Father, God the Son, through the power of the Holy Spirit. So here's what that doesn't mean. That doesn't mean that the way that the church becomes one is that we all decide we're going to hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and tell each other our feelings. Like, that's not a bad thing. We probably ought to do that more often, but whatever, right? But here was his point. God, I pray that they would be so in us, so in relationship with me, so in love with me. I pray that God would be so macro in their lives that everything else pales in comparison. That they would be so in love with me, they would be so for me, they would be so anything else, nothing else matters except for God. And God has given us a mission, that this mission is to take the gospel to the nations, and they are in love with me, they are in love with this mission, that they are so deeply entrenched in the person of Jesus, so deeply in love with Jesus, that is the common bond, that is the thing that transcends everybody and everything else. That there would be this oneness of our desire, passion, love for God, and to take the gospel to the nations. That, okay, we might make different things and look different ways and think different things. And okay, cool, you believe in a trickle-down economy, and I believe in a bubble-up economy. Or I believe in a bubble-up, and you believe in a trickle-down. Like who cares? Like, is God being glorified in my life, through my life, and am I carrying the gospel? And that's the only thing. Like, other things have a variance of importance, but they should pale in comparison to my love and passion, and everything else is under the banner of us working out our salvation with fear and trembling. Here's what's wild. You've probably experienced this before, whether you realize it or not. Anybody who has played in any way, shape, or form in a team sport where there was a high level of commitment in a goal that you were trying to accomplish. If you played football in high school, if you played baseball, basketball, if you were on the cheer team, or you were a mathlete on the chess club, whatever it was, like, there was this high level of commitment. Maybe it was with your job or your organization that you were a part of, right? But this organization, this team, brought people from all different walks of life together. But through the avenue of a shared mission and shared suffering, there was this unity that was built. And you played on the team together. But regardless of who the person next to you was from, or what they thought, or what they believed, or whatever it was, like that, I don't care. My question is can you block the guy in front of you? Can you tackle the guy who's running with the ball? Can you, if you're a soccer player, kick it like, bend it like Beckham? Can you kick it in the goal? Can you can you accomplish the thing and do the thing? Because all that matters is this mission of winning the game. And you met people and got along with people and connected with people who you probably never would have before. But isn't this true? The tension, it's not that tension wasn't there, it's just that tension was almost non-existent because the tension was so secondary to the macro goal. And Jesus prayed. He said, I pray that they would be in us. And I think the in between the lines is that we would be so macro, that this gospel to the nations would be so macro in their life, everything else would just be so minimized. And I get it, man. There are so many questions based on that. So what part does truth play into it? Where does sin fall into that? Where does difference of doctrine and theology? We're going to talk about that over the next few weeks. Here's all I want us to know. Oneness is worth fighting for. Oneness is worth fighting for. In fact, here's how I want you to remember that. If we ever resolve the tension that our differences create, if we ever resolve the tension that our differences create, we lose the opportunity for the world to see the love of God. Not fully, not finally, but if we ever resolve the tension inside, we're just gonna back out of it, we're gonna ease out of it, we're gonna lose our oneness because of it, then we, as a community of faith, lose the opportunity. Because I think now more than ever, I wish the church as a whole, every group, every organization, every church was on the same page. But I think now more than ever, our church specifically has an extraordinary opportunity to display this. Our church, because we're a non-denominational church, which I don't even like the idea of non-denomination because we're not something, we are for Jesus. Different sermon, different day. But I think our church, we bring in people from all different backgrounds, especially all different faith and religious backgrounds. Some of you were from a church growing up where you're from a Catholic church and everyone wore robes and there was incense, or you're from an Episcopal church and there was, the altar up front and the really holy people sat in a specific seat. You were from a church, a Baptist church, and the pastor always wore a suit and tie. You were from a church that was a non-denominational church, and you don't know your pastor who doesn't wear jeans, flip-flops, and sit on a stool, right? And for some of us, we're from no church at all. We just heard about church and you showed up one day because somebody invited you, somebody asked you, a kid asked you, a parent asked you, a friend asked you, a cute girl, a cute guy asked you, and you're like, well, I don't really believe in all this, but yeah, I'll go if you're going, But you showed up, and you guys have done a phenomenal job of inviting people. And we are a melting pot of different people from different places, from different spaces, from different geographies, from different ethnicities, from different socioeconomic, from different ideological, from different political, from different backgrounds. And if we ever lose our oneness, we lose the witness of God's love for us. Because the way that I love you is not based on what you can do for me, but it's based on the fact that God loved me and God loved you. And so I'm going to love you and I'm going to serve you. Our oneness is worth fighting for. And if we ever resolve that tension, we all lose. And will it be uncomfortable? Absolutely. Will we have to have some conversations? Of course. Come on. That's the witness. That's the one thing that God prayed for, that Jesus prayed for, that we would be one. And again, there are so many questions. How does individuality play in it? How does individual ideology play into it? Where does truth interface this? And what things should we believe doctrinally and not believe doctrinally, theologically and not theologically, and sinfully and not sinfully? That's fantastic questions. Come back next week, okay? We're going to start doing some of that stuff. But here's all I want us to know. If we're going to spend the next 4 weeks fighting for this, it's worth fighting for because our witness is on the line. That's all I want to say. We're going to end our service together through the one thing that the church universally has always agreed on. Well, that's kind of true. We've always agreed that we probably should do, which is communion. Different versions, different variations, different practices of how it comes across. But universal agreement that the thing that unifies us all together is Jesus' death and his resurrection, of his reconciliation of a lost and a broken world. And so in a second, we're going to take a minute and we're going to sing one more song. And as we sing that song, kind of as you're ready, we want you to come up and receive communion, knowing that this is the unifying thought. This is the unifying idea. When Peter talked to Jesus and Jesus says, who do you think that I am? He says, I think that you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus said, that's what I'm going to build my church on. And he died for it. He rose again for it. And the night before he died, he said, I want my disciples together. And I want you to take this body, which is broken for you. I want you to take this blood, which is shed for you, for the forgiveness of many. Because I am establishing a new covenant, a new relationship of forgiveness, of love, of truth, and of grace. And I pray that that is the unifying idea that transcends every single difference. Because our oneness is our witness. And if we ever resolve that tension, then we all lose. Let's pray together. Jesus, I pray and I thank you for the fact that you so loved us, you died for us. And we all have difference. But you called us to be a unique community that embraced that. A unique community that loved in spite of it. You've called us to be your church. And I pray as we join today, taking communion with churches that have met together and done this together since the very first time that it happened, which was the night that you died, which was the night that you prayed that we would be one. God, I pray that you would make us one. That your death, your resurrection, your glory would be macro in our lives. Everything else would pale in comparison to that. Everything else would just be us saying, how can we live for you more? How can we glorify you more? How can we be like you more? How can we spread the good news of your grace and your truth and your love more? And God, I pray that you would make us one. As we take this bread, dip it in the cup, you remember that your body was broken, your blood was shed, and we are forgiven. Father, help us to be one. And it's in your name we pray.